Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus 3D printing video. Today we're going to actually be taking a look at this rather dirty Nintendo 64 console. And now this console I'd actually gotten free from my local used game store. And the main reason for that is it did not have a jumper pack. I just put my actual jumper pack in here. And this damage on this side here. There's a big chunk of the plastic case just legit missing. So at first I was thinking I was just going to find some way to fix that case, but the more I thought about it, and there's also a couple of vent holes missing here, I wanted to find some kind of replacement case. And luckily, when I was going online here, and yes, I did test this already and it does legitimately work. That's why I popped the jumper pack in. There's this one here, which is the N64 Lite case, which was available on printables for free. And basically what I want to do here is print both halves of the case, the power button and the reset button, and get that all going on my 3D printers. And the way that this case actually works is it actually connects with little magnets. You can also do it with screws as well, but I figured I got a package of like 80 of the magnets from Amazon for like $8, so I'd give it a shot. But as you can see here, I'll bring up my slicing software, and I was actually astounded to find out this fits on the Neptune 3 Pro. So all I'm going to do now is grab the top piece. See, you probably can't see, but there's the top screw, bottom screw, and basically the top here is just the version that doesn't use screws. So all we're going to do here is I'm going to take my like normal 3D printing profile, and I'm going to try this a couple times to see what would be the best. I do not believe we need any supports for this because, as you can kind of see here, actually the cartridge slot will need to be supported, as will the buttonholes. So I will need to do like touching build plate in order to make sure nothing is going to have a problem. But other than that, everything should be okay here. So I'm just going to, let me just try slicing it how it defaultly looks right now and see what that gives me. Okay, looks like that's going to take about, I'm printing it rather slow here, but it's going to take about 22 hours and about 151 grams of filament. So what I'm going to do is, let me just try bumping the layer height down a little. Currently I have it printing at 10% infill. I want to see if maybe he has any settings here that he'd recommend. Okay, yeah, as he said, the 8x12 magnets. And I want to see his little PDF here. Modify as you want. Now, there's no actual settings here, but I think just to be safe, I'm going to bump the infill to 15%. I don't think it's going to make a lot of difference because the case itself is pretty thin. And let's see, okay, we got our temperatures right. We got our print speed is pretty slow. Enable retraction, cooling. I just want to make sure we got support. And I'm going to do support touching build plate because there doesn't need to be support everywhere, because that's not going to make a difference. So let's see if this really gives us much of a difference in amount of time to print this or anything. Now that's kind of funny. I lowered the actual layer height, and I added well, then again, I also made touching build plate for the supports instead of everywhere, so that probably took a little filament away. But now it took me to 1 day 18 hours with the lower layer height. But what that will do is it will make the layer lines a lot less. So this will be printed on our Neptune 3 Pro, And then what I'll do here is I'm going to, now that that's saved, I'm going to delete that. Then I'm going to open up the other little files here. There is power button, reset. Those will be our little doohickeys here. And I'm going to more or less use the same settings for those. Actually, since they're such tiny little pieces, I'm going to make them a bit stronger, because I don't want the actual buttons to be broken, so I'm going to print them with 100% infill, so they'll be a bit stronger. They're only going to be 5 grams of filament anyway, and I'll slice that for the Pro as well. The good thing about the Pro and the Max is they actually can share files. So if it turns out that the Max finishes before the Pro, I can actually print it on that. But I'm going to go over and switch over to the Max. And then we're going to open up N64 Lite bottom. And this will be the bottom for... Oh, okay, and there's absolutely nothing on the bottom of this that needs to be supported, so I can just do this completely without supports, because everything is fine. It's not like the top where I needed to support the cartridge slot. And I'm going to do 15% infill again, and I'm going to do 0.1 on the layer height, so it basically just makes the model look a bit more fine, and no actual, how do I want to say it? No actual post-processing will really be necessary, except for getting the glue off of the model where it touched the build plate. And then that'll slice our bottom piece. 1 day, 23 hours. So I'm going to save that to a file. And then all I got to do is I got my 3D printer memory card. I'll do the same thing for the other printer, and then you plug this into the printer and put the files on there. I mean, plug this into the computer and put the files on here, and then we will go over to the 3D printers and actually print the files. So I'll be right back with being over at the printers, and I'll show you how I'm starting those files. Okay, now that I got the Elegoo Neptune 3 Max loaded with the Elegoo Blue PLA filament, which I'm going to print this Nintendo 64 case with, I can now apply some glue stick to the plate, which I might need a different one because this one feels kind of light, and then that will let the 3D print adhere a bit better to the build plate. Now, there's some people who 3D print that'll tell you you don't need to do this or you shouldn't do this, but it's kind of one of those things I always say, if it works for you, do what works for you. If you want to tell me I should be using glue stick, then you 3D print the way you want to, I'll do it the way I want to. This works for me, and I don't have to worry about that a nearly 2-day print is going to come off the build plate because I'm afraid of a little glue on my plastic, you know what I mean? But that's all we have to do. It pretty much covered like the middle of the build plate, so that's what I'm going to kind of focus on here since it doesn't need to be the whole thing. Oh wow, this glue stick actually had a little bit more glue than I thought it did. I thought it was nearly done, but I'm just basically coating it nicely with the glue so when it starts laying down lines of filament, they don't all come off and then you get corners of your case that don't quite work so well, and you'll get deformities in the case, which is not fun. Trust me, I've had things I've had that happen with, and it's never a good time. But there's our glue stick, and that probably should do, but I'm gonna go ahead and take my scraper here, get a little bit of the extra glue out of the glue stick packaging here, and just kind of put it down like spackle, if you will, just to be absolutely sure we got our coverage here. Plus that takes the rest of the glue out of the packaging and makes it easier to recycle. But yeah, there you go. And it gives us some good coverage too. And you make sure that your whole build plate is covered. And since I just loaded that filament, the build plate and the extruder are heated. So they're both ready to do the 3D print. So I'm just gonna pause the video here a second. Okay, and I just legitimately put some more glue on the build plate just to be sure. So I'm gonna go out of the settings here, print, and we're gonna find EN Max N64 light bottom and print that. And then in a couple seconds here, the printer should start printing because it's all heated up and ready to go. I think it just has to heat the nozzle up to 205 degrees because for some reason the printer defaults to 200 degrees. And that'll get the printer all started. And what I'm going to do now is for the Pro over here, I'm going to clean off its build plate, flip it over because I want the smooth side just like we have on the Max. And I'm going to load the second spool of blue filament in there too. So I will be back and we will get that one started too. Okay, I am back now, and as you can see, the Neptune 3 Max is well underway. It's been doing it for 18 minutes, doing the first layers. And I'm gonna go ahead and move my camera over to the Neptune 3 Pro. It's about to get started. And as you can see here, I put the glue stick all over the build plate because this is pretty much gonna max out the build volume of the Pro. Whereas you can see with the Neptune 3 Max over here, it's got room to spare because, you know, it's a big printer. I probably could have legitimately put both case pieces on the... No, I was going to say I could have put both case pieces on the Max and still have room to spare, but they probably would have either just fit or not quite fit. But I had to bump the print head all the way up because I needed to put the glue stick on. And what happened was after these printers level, they freeze the build plate and you can't move it backward or forward. So that was the only way I knew of to get the print head out of the way so I could put the glue stick on the build plate. And as I said, I know there are going to be people who will say, no, you don't need to do that. You just need to calibrate this, that, or the other thing. But I look at it this way. If I'm doing a print that's going to legitimately take 2 days, I'm going to make sure that that print is not coming off the build plate. And right now what it's doing is it's drawing its first line for the outline of the case. And as you can absolutely see, I don't know if you can see, it legitimately gets to the outside of that build plate. So if you have a Neptune 3 Pro, this will just fit on your Pro. So you don't need a Max. A Neptune 3 Pro will do, because I don't know if you can see it in the video, but those lines are legitimately right on the edge of that build plate. So this pretty much maxes out that printer's build volume. But basically what's going to happen here is these two printers are going to be printing for about just shy of 2 days. Because as I said, I have them printing fairly slow, 40 millimeters per second, because that will make the layer lines really small, and therefore they won't be seen so well. They're doing it at about a 15% infill, and they're doing 0.1 for the layer height, so hopefully the layers of the print will not be seen as much. But, you know, it's kind of one of those things. I've never done this before, so we will see how it works. But what I will do is I might splice in a few progress things as these happen, because what'll happen is probably before I go to bed tonight, right now it's 5 o'clock, So in a few hours before I go to bed, I'll probably like have a video of what they're doing then, and then when I wake up then, and then when I get home from work tomorrow, I'll show what they're currently actively doing. And of course, the cool thing is I have a Alfred camera, which is actually just a cell phone that I have mounted to a stand, and it can actually see the printers, and I can actually remote into it when I'm at work to make sure the printers are actually, still printing. But suffice it to say, this is quite a lengthy process, and the good thing is that it fits on the Neptune 3 Pro, and I can have both halves of the case printing at the same time, as the little buttons and everything will only take like an hour, maybe two, so it won't be a big deal to print those, whereas these are the major pieces. And they're not even going to really touch these blue rolls of filament. It's like 150 grams per piece. So, yeah. But that's all for right now. What I'm going to do in the next part is just plug in the Nintendo 64 to 100% make sure it works. And then after we have our case pieces all done, I will open that console and clean up the board and then pop it into here, and we'll see if we got a very sleek looking Nintendo 64. But yeah, that'll be all for right now, and you'll see me again when I'm in the middle bedroom of my house testing the console itself to be sure it still works. Okay, now as you can see, I have swapped my regular N64. Well, you really can't see because it just looks like an N64, but I've swapped my regular N64 with the one that I just showed you that's kind of like messed up after getting the 3D printer started. And here's our screen. I plugged in the Summer Cart 64. I will have a bit more of a better video about this cartridge at some point, and I just realized, I just looked at the clock here, I got to set the real-time clock because it thinks it's June of last year, so it says June of 2024, but as you can see, the system is fully functional, loading our Summer Cart 64, and let me go ahead and just run Super Mario 64 just to be sure here. Mario. And as you can see, our Nintendo 64 is fully functional, no problem. So after this, I'm going to, once the case finishes printing, I'm going to take it out of its shell, and then we will go ahead and get to putting this Nintendo 64 in its in the new shell that I made. So as you can see, fully functional Nintendo 64, but as I showed you in the beginning of the video, the system is just all like, the shell is not so nice, so that's why we're making this custom shell for this system. But as you can see, fully functional, no problems, but that's all for this console in its current state. But I will go ahead and wait for the shells to finish another day or two. I'll give you a couple of progress updates, like I'll give you one in a little while where I go and check the how it's printing and show you where we're at right now. But yeah, suffice it to say, everything's working, no problems with this system. So it'll be a nice swap into our new 3D printed blue shell once that's finished. But that's all for now. Okay, we are just over 5 hours into these prints, and both printers have a decently thick layer of material down. And you'll see that's where the expansion pack goes, that's where the cartridge goes. And as I said in the beginning, they're printing rather slow, but it's kind of one of those things, I'd rather them print nice and slow and the print quality actually end up really good. But yeah, that's where we are right now. well, just hitting 5 hours on the small printer here, the Neptune 3 Pro. 5 hours and 18 minutes on the Max. And they're both a decent layer of plastic down. By the time I wake up in the morning, they'll probably have like a little bit of the sides started, I would imagine. You can see those are all the vent holes on the bottom, so the thing will be well ventilated, and I'm probably going to put some little rubber feet underneath that so it'll even have a little bit more to hold it from the surface of the table or whatever the system will end up sitting on. But yep, that's all for now, and we'll see what it looks like in the morning. Okay, now after 14 hours, our case pieces are a bit thicker, but still no side panels yet, so probably not until later. But that's what they look like now. Okay, now as you can see, we are nearly 24 hours into the print. The big printer's been going for 23 hours and 27 minutes. It's laid down a very good bottom layer, and as you can see, it's just starting to build some of the walls, and it's starting to build some of the posts that are going to hold the actual board in there. The top section, of course, since it's a little bit smaller, since it doesn't have to hold the power supply as much, it's just going to be a little like top piece for it, whereas that's going to have a bit more holding of the power supply. Has a decent development on the walls, and you can kind of see some of those areas that are going to be holding the case together, like these things here will snap together, and that's where we'll put our magnets. But yep, we're doing pretty good, and I will have one more update before bedtime tonight, and then probably tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow afternoon I'll show you the finished cases. But yeah, everything seems to be going good with these. Everything is printing nice and smoothly, and the quality looks to be really good. And I'm sure this blue filament is going to make a very good looking case for the system. But yeah, I'll be back with you later. Okay, and now it is now just before 9 o'clock at night on the second day after I started printing these. You'll see we're at, if you can see without the reflection, 28 hours and 38 minutes and 28 hours and 19 minutes respectively. They both have a decent brim on them right now, and most likely they'll be done at some point tomorrow, because we're at like 49% and 41%, and you might think that's not too far, but the percentage goes as far as amount of layers. But as you kind of got to realize, that first big slab that's on the plate, that's a lot of printing. So the rest of the layers, which are just more of the build-up for the like various areas here that are going to hold the expansion pack and the cartridge slot and everything, they're not going to have as much material in them, so they won't take as long. But what I will do is tomorrow morning, which is going to be another like 8 hours or so from now, we'll take a look at what they look like then. But that's where we are. Just a little bit over a day of solid printing on the two pieces. But I'll take you back tomorrow morning. Okay, and now it's overnight. We're at 37 hours and 52 minutes and 38 hours and 11 minutes. You'll notice this one's at 75%, the top piece. It's just basically finishing up a lot of the pieces and the walls and everything. And then the bottom panel, you can see a lot of the screw posts that'll actually hold the Nintendo 64 motherboard, and it's currently at 71%. So there is a pretty high chance that these might be done by the time I get home from work today. But yeah, everything is looking good, and yeah, we'll check them later when I get home from work, and they should be either pretty close or completely done. But yeah, that's where we are right now. Okay, now I'm back from work. The first piece, which is this one here, the top part has finished. It finished at 44 hours and 18 minutes. And that was about like a little over 3 hours ago, because the bottom piece is still going at 47 hours and 35 minutes. And it's only at 91%, so it's probably going to be done like later this evening. And I can already see there it has like a piece where the power supply thingy is going to kind of sit. I don't know if you can see that on the camera here, but that's where the power supply thing is going to sit in the back there. And if you see on the other piece here, that's where the other power supply thingy is going to sit. So they'll kind of connect together. But what I'm going to do is put the camera on the tripod, pop the first piece off, and then start the print for the buttons. I think I'm just going to print them in the blue. They're just press fitted together, so no need for like gluing them or anything. And if I don't like the aesthetic, I can always print replacement buttons. But all we got to do is this. Pop the build plate up, here it is, and then just kind of do this. Maybe. Wow. Oh, there it goes. I was going to say, it's got to pop eventually. And then just, I'll get my scraper for this. Sometimes if you have problems with parts releasing from the build plate, grab your scraper, put it underneath, and then just kind of pop it out. Yep, not bad. It's coming out not so bad. There we go. And now you'll see the glue residue over the top. All you need to do is take Clorox wipe, go right on that, and you're fine. There's a little bit of lines on the side, but I can honestly say it came out just about as good as I thought it would. Power button and reset button go on the top, and of course the expansion port goes in here, cartridge here. I'll have to pop out some of the support material for the buttons and everything, but all in all, not bad. So that'll be our top half of the case. I'll put that aside for now, and let me go ahead and get the build plate prepped for our buttons. All I gotta basically do is peel off the brim, put the plate back on, and just peel this up here. Little piece over there. Just pull this out a little bit more. And usually it's best to get as much of the any support or anything that's on your build plate off, because as you can see from my earlier video, it just created a mess. But there you go, there's all our brim off. Just some glue. And now all I'm going to do is go to return, print, and then there's this one which just says power bump. That actually is just the model that I put in the little buttons, and they're just kind of going to be in the middle of the build plate here, so I'm just going to do that just to make sure we have enough coverage so the buttons will kind of stick on here. And we're going to get those printed, which will only take a few hours. In fact, it'll probably be done before the bottom section, and then we'll have our whole Nintendo 64 case, and probably tomorrow or the next day I will go ahead and put this all together, and we'll wrap things up here. Not too complicated of a build, and I definitely have to say I like how everything is looking here. It's definitely a nice result. The vent holes came out nicely, and I don't know if you can see over here, we're just going to turn you over here, but the little vent holes in the side of the bottom actually are here. And I'm glad those bridged properly, because when I saw that on my camera, I was kind of afraid that they wouldn't bridge properly. But yeah, everything looks all right. But we're going to wait until that finishes printing and the buttons finishing printing, and then we'll get everything all put together. And maybe in my next video when I'm prepping the case, I'll show you getting the glue off, because it's not hard. But that's all for now. Okay, it is now a little bit later in the night. After 49 hours and 40 minutes, our bottom plate for the Nintendo 64 Lite is done. So I'll just pull off the build plate here, and then basically the way that you get this off is you bend it one side, just like an ice cube tray. That's how I usually do it. And then that will usually get the whole thing right off the build plate. No problems. Even with the glue. The only time I've ever had trouble is if it's like the whole build plate. It can sometimes be a little hard to get the 3D print off the build plate. You usually have to use the scraper a lot. But yeah, there's our finished bottom, and that's where the magnets will go. And then this is where our power supply snaps in. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with our small printer for the switches. We'll just get these off, and this is just the power and reset switch. And I'm not sure what the little piece in the middle is, but the power switch is just going to toggle the little switch that's actually on the motherboard. And that only took an hour and 36 minutes. So at this point, I'm just going to turn off both of my printers because neither of them need to be on. And then, of course, a little bit of post-processing, namely getting the glue off of both pieces and any nasty bits that are still in the actual pieces. I'll get those out before I put everything together. And then, of course, our Nintendo 64 Lite console will be done. But I'm just going to get these off the plate here, and then we will move on to the next step, where we take the Nintendo 64 apart and do a little post-processing on the case.